Welcome to our Future of Fireside Chat podcast powered by InFUUSE. I'm your host, Tanyette Cologne. In our Future of podcast, we bring together an extraordinary panel of futurists, disruptors, innovators, and dreamers for an electrifying virtual roundtable discussion. Our mission is simple yet ambitious: to blueprint action items that will create a more inclusive world. We believe that even amidst chaos, there is always an opportunity to create positive change. In this podcast, we will explore the current landscape and identify key trends and challenges that are shaping the future of work, the future of business, the future of health, and our society as a whole. We will gather insights and perspectives from a diverse range of experts who can bring unique viewpoints and experiences to the table. Our goal is to use the roundtable discussion as a starting point for a larger conversation and movement towards a more inclusive and equitable world. Join us as we explore questions such as how technology can be leveraged to help humanity, what challenges are facing marginalized communities in the workplace, and how we can build more resilient and adaptable communities that can withstand the disruptions of the 21st century. By the end of this podcast, we hope to have identified specific action items and recommendations that will help us create a more just and sustainable future. So sit back, relax, and get ready for an electrifying and thought-provoking discussion with our incredible panel of experts. This is the Future of, powered by InFUUSE. Hello, and welcome to our Future of Fireside Chat series. I'm your host, Tanyette Cologne, and I'm really excited about our conversation today because we're going to be visioning into the future of communities. Really, how can we transform the way we look at community building today? What connected living could look like in the not too distant future? As always, if this is the first time you've joined the journey with us, we're always bringing in visionary thought leaders, entrepreneurs from all different walks of life to the proverbial virtual roundtable to have different discussions to open our minds and our hearts, and more importantly, our imaginations into what the future could be if we allowed ourselves to dream in audaciously. So I usually start this before I introduce our panel. I usually start and set the container with an intention and an approach. And obviously I just went through the intention is to have you guys just really, really open your hearts and your minds to what is possible. Feel free to drop into the chat where you're coming in from around the globe. Use the Q&A section so that our panelists, we want it to be interactive. And if you're feeling brave, raise the virtual hand that's to the right there of your screen so that we can bring you on the virtual stage to answer your questions. But I usually like to set up the container or the journey with a quote. And this one was specifically one that I found of Hemingway that I thought was really just beautiful to set up the discussion for today. And it was something I wrote actually ironically after one of the Ancient Future Summits that Israel just finished up a month ago. They have one coming up on September 19th. We'll talk more about that towards the end, but it's Hemingway. And he's like, it's not dwelling on the shadows that we sculpt our destiny, but in kindling the flames of boundless imagination to forge a world that transcends the limits of our vision. So that'll be the fuel we'll use to go on the journey today. So I wanted to introduce our panelists today. First, I'll start with Savannah Day Goins, who has over 30 years of experience in the financial industry. She's the founder of Women X Meta, a company that was established with the vision to create new pathways for women in Web3. Savannah passionately engages, educates, elevates, and emboldens women and BIPOC to find their voice in emerging tech. We have Miranda Tan, who is a serial entrepreneur, both in Web3 and in the influencer space. She had an exit with her former company in China. She's the head of growth for GoMutual.io, which is a new company that will be launching in mid to late October that will be disrupting the auto collision insurance industry through emerging tech. And then we have from team Azraya, Nikhil Kale, who's CEO and co-founder of Azraya. He has worked with hundreds of conscious entrepreneurs and visionary creators to elevate entrepreneurs and their brands and their revenue streams. He is also the author of the newly published book, God Force, which is to liberate your mind, master your reality, and unleash your primal goals. Oh, genius, sorry. And then Azrai is a conscious and technology community ecosystem innovation hub, marketplace, and really much more than that, designed to preserve the planet, ignite creativity, and help members generate sovereign wealth. The goal is to converge ancient indigenous wisdom and emerging tech to become one of the biggest global education platforms for visionary entrepreneurs and planetary stewards whose ethos is to elevate humanity forward. And then last but not least, we have Stefanos, who's the co-founder and chief visionary officer for Azraya. Steph is a serial entrepreneur who has launched several successful businesses in the past 2 years. And also as a coach and mentor, he has held energetic and psychological spaces for thousands of people as they move through personal transformation. I usually love to start it with set the foundation with the origin story of how you guys came to the current intersection that you're in now that's brought you to this point. So I'll start with you, Savannah, because I know you had more of a traditional background with finance, and then you find yourself here now.
So thank you. And it's great that everyone is here. So thanks for joining us today for this conversation. Yes, I definitely had a very traditional background in finance. I spent 3 decades on Wall Street. I covered a product within our global credit group that basically helped people find money to do acquisitions and really finance all their ambitions to grow. And then I sort of took a step away. I worked for a firm that was changing its strategy and sort of didn't seem to align very well with where I wanted to be. So I took a step away and I thought, well, I'll just take some time off, figure it out. And then my kids said, no, we've got some other ideas for you. And I'm like, oh, great, let's talk about it. So basically, what it came down to is we have always felt it very important that women and people of color have a physical presence in technology. And we know that the future is all about tech, and Web3 was really the most recent iteration of internet innovation. And we thought that women and people of color are needed in the space to make sure that we are building responsive tech to the marginalized communities. So we basically embarked on an education journey where we provided a lot of free educational content across all social media, because what we believed in was we needed to contextualize what Web3 was for most people and connect it to their everyday lives. And allowed them to gain access to it very easily, whether they were on their commute home or whether they were, basically trying to figure out what they were going to do before they went to bed. So we did that. I did it with my 2 daughters. So we're an intergenerational team, which is wonderful because we have a lot of multi-directional learning going on. And we love what we do to help bring equity and justice into the tech evolution.
Miranda?
Thanks. I think for me, it's been kind of funny. It's like it wasn't really planned. I would say, when I grew up, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, a typical Asian, and then I was a lawyer, and then I really wanted to do something, a little different. So I actually started out, doing PR. And then from PR, I worked with a number of venture-backed companies, public companies, and I met a bunch of entrepreneurs. And when I met these people, right, it was just one of the things that really attracted me about them was I was like, wow, these are people who's changing what's going on. And I wanted to be part of that whole movement. And, and I did PR marketing, for about 10 years. Then I was like, hey, I want to build a company. I want to get into tech. And then I got into that, and I got into big data. And I think for each part of my, my journey, I just kind of follow my heart and my passion. And I think I was very fortunate to be around to kind of be able to do that, and also get to meet a lot of amazing people on each part of my journey. And I think each part of my journey, where every time I felt like, oh, I mastered something, or I knew something really well, I'm always surprised to say, oh my God, there's another layer. And I always feel like, when I did PR marketing for many years, I was like, I got this. I knew exactly, I would say I could do it back of my hand. Then I got into big data. And, once I got data, then I got into the influencer. Then I got into blockchain. I got Web 2, and then I think each part of them, there was something exciting like going on. And it's really exciting how, where we are now in terms of where everything is. And I would say like, it's like, it's really, if you look at the whole evolution, what's going on, I think you just follow what's, follow the, what's going on. And there's an opportunity for everyone to participate. And so I think to respond to your answer is, I would say I just kind of like, just kind of follow my passion. And then naturally through evolution of technology, then you're there. Yeah.
Nikhil?
Thank you. So I was born in India, in Bombay, and always had like this part of me that would kind of question reality and question why I'm here. And deep down, I knew that I was here for something more. And I think we all feel that in some capacity. Kind of fast forward, migrated to Australia, immigrant family when I was 5, and just kind of went through the motions of finding my place in the world. And when I was actually 18, I had quite a significant, you could call it a spiritual awakening, which really kind of opened up my perspective to the wider, broader reality. And it was actually quite a tumultuous time as well. Even though there was a lot of inner beauty and growth, I was also faced with some shadows from my past and childhood, which actually put me on a pathway of self-destruction. But interestingly enough, when I was 21, I found a job in the Middle East working for a big airline there. I didn't know what it was, but it provided me an opportunity to leave Australia and to leave those ways. So at this point in my life, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. I started a psychology degree, a teaching degree, and then I just decided to put everything on pause. For 9 years, I was in the Middle East, just traveling the world profusely, over 70 countries, which I recognized was preparing me to comprehend the world in a more nuanced way, culture, people, and step into a leadership role. I was the youngest leader person in the airline at 24, so I was able to manage big teams and actually in high pressure situations. And while I was over in Dubai, I decided to finish my degree to appease my Asian Indian mother, finish my degree, and I did my business degree over there. And the one thing that I learned was, hey, you know what? Maybe I can start a business. Coming back to Australia when I was 30, because there was no more growth within the airline, I didn't want to be on corporate in Dubai because, it's a desert. And this is when I started my first tech business, which was a lifestyle app in Australia. And I learned a lot on that business, also how not to do things, of course, also how to do things, and coded my own application. So I had a kind of tech background. I remember when I was 12, I learned how to code websites using Notepad, if anyone remembers Notepad. And kind of like fast forward, in my early 30s, I reconnected with Steph at that point in time and was supporting him with his business and his expansion as well. And I just continued to dive deeper into the realm of technology, but with an intention of serving only conscious entrepreneurs and conscious businesses, because I had this deeper awareness that, look, like about the nature of reality, and it would feel an integrity to me to be of service in that way. Back in 2018, me and Steph were both part of a blockchain startup whose intention was to elevate humanity's consciousness with blockchain technology. And, we were there for about a year, learned a lot, also a lot of lessons about how not to run a decentralized organization, but also a lot of awareness around some of the possibilities in the space. And then fast forward to 2020, during the lockdown time, I had a real revelatory experience, and you could say like a vision or a transmission around how Asraya wanted to emerge into the world, and the convergence of technology with ancestral wisdom, with innovative ways of collaborating and creating together. And I just followed that thread, just trusting that this was the pathway. Ended up in Greece, ended up in Mexico, where I am now. And back in late 2021 is when I reconnected with Steph around collaborating on a project, which he'll share more about, which then opened up the pathway to really go all in on Australia. So to kind of bring it to fruition, we've got this, spiritual consciousness, philosophy, the occult, that's part of my interests, and technology. And I figure bring it together to be in service, and Australia has emerged and really landed in the world in that way. So pause there. Thank you.
Steph?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate everyone sharing. Thanks for having me here, Tanya. So, origin story, I'll make this fairly brief. Was born in Australia and then very, very quickly, within a few months, moved to Greece. I'm half Greek, half Italian. First generation Australian. And we lived in Greece for the first few years of my life. So Greek was my first language. Came back to Australia. My father struggled to make it work there from an employment perspective. Europe at that time was a little challenging. So we came back to Australia and really just struggled. I felt very displaced. I had so much of my family that I was connected to and attached to in Greece, but then also had family, namely my mother's parents in Australia. And it was just very difficult. I couldn't speak the language. I felt very displaced at school as well. And that led to, and also I should probably mention this, it's worth mentioning, personal aspect of self is that I grew up in a very volatile, violent, uncertain environment. And that essentially shaped the career path or the focus that I took in life, which was wanting to understand human psychology, wanting to understand human performance, understand people, relationships, how we interact with each other, how we deal with pain and fear and guilt and shame and violence and all these extreme things that we go through. And I started that at a very young age. And there was a combination of not only understanding the mind and psychology and relationships, but also spirituality. What is it that we don't know? What is it that is unseen to us as human beings? And bringing that into conversation in more profound and deeper ways. But it wasn't really until I dealt with, and I'm fast forwarding a lot here, but it wasn't really until I dealt with my trauma in a very meaningful way that I was able to, I guess, create the impact that I desired, that I deeply visioned that I could, because I was living through supporting and helping others, thinking unconsciously that was what would help me, but it wasn't. So I had to really go through, the depths of my own shadow, as Jung would say, and really understand myself in a more whole manner. And that came back to loving self in deeper ways as well. Along the way, though, very, very enthused with life and very enthused with learning and understanding. So I traveled the world and then went to university, quote unquote, late. I didn't go straight out of high school. I had to come in as a mature age entrant via an examination. And I studied behavioral science and psychology. And throughout the years, my studies have really focused on combination of entrepreneurship and understanding business, quite an eclectic combination, ecology, natural systems, psychology, trauma, somatics, etc. Really understanding how we as humans function and move through the world and our connection to Earth as well, and how that can actually serve us. And so fast forward a little more, went through massive transitions, spent years on deeper inner work, again, started that process a little late, came out of that and just really, not that I immersed myself, because I've been coaching since I was 18 and, meeting people where I could meet people, having clients that were really at the level that I could teach or show or support, right? But I've been in the coaching space, in the consulting space for 23 years. And so that never really stopped. I mean, there were periods of time where it definitely slowed down as I went inward more, but it never really stopped. And so I just picked up pace on that. And at the same time, started building certain businesses. So my own practice, as Nikhil mentioned, we moved into, we were part of a tech startup together that didn't go quite the way we had envisioned to go. But again, we learned a lot from that. And that was really a catalyst, one of many, for bringing Nikhil and I together once again, to really immerse ourselves in Australia. And what how Australia was born from, I guess, from a technical perspective, outside of these two visions that both Nikhil and I had. Nikhil's very, very specific to what Australia is now. Mine more of a how do I be part of something, a movement that impacts the earth, the world, culture, society in such a way where we make these changes away from the norm that maybe seems a little bit inequitable or a lot inequitable in certain cases. And there's maybe too much destruction and not enough expansion, right? And so I was working on my book, on my second book, and I haven't finished it quite yet because I paused it. We got some advice from an NFT specialist at the time and consultant that was quite well known. And he suggested that instead of leading with turning my book into an NFT, we should lead with the community aspect of what we were offering one of the tiers. In fact, all 4 tiers, but in the first tier specifically. And Nikhil and I started speaking to that because it wasn't a foreign conversation. The level of detail that was involved in that came from Nikhil's genius and came from many years of both of us separately and together, really envisioning what does a global community look like, or a new kind of global community. So it was outlined very, very simply. And so we looked at each other and we said, this is what we need to do. And it was convenient for me because I was about to have a baby. My wife was, and it's a lot more, I guess, pressure and responsibility to be the sole responsibility for writing the book because everything's on me, as opposed to being part of a community that is also emergent, because that's part of what Australia is. It's an emergent community. That means that the community is building itself. It's growing as we are growing. It wasn't just going to be led by Nikhil and myself, but because Nikhil's a trusted friend, one of my closest friends, and we'd done business before so many times, I knew what I was getting into, and I knew what the level of support that I would have going into this next phase of my life. And so I felt very confident about that. And here we are a couple of years later, still growing, still building, and hopefully about to raise our first round of investment capital as well in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So I'll pause then, and thanks for the stage for a brief moment. I appreciate you all.
Thank you. And that sets up. Now we're going to start diving deep into the tech portion of it. Some of the questions are going to be technical because I want people who are learning about the tech to start seeing real life examples of how this can weave into everyday life, as well as, just get their inspiration going. So I'll start with the first question, and I'll start with you, Nikhil, and then we'll go around the horn. How can ancient wisdom and traditional community values be integrated into a decentralized and digital world of Web3 to ensure that technology uplifts rather than disrupts community?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So where I see there being a beautiful convergence is in the design of the community dynamics and the inevitable Web3 architecture that supports that. It is really important that we turn to the ancestral ways in indigenous tribes and in communities of practice that actually have a specific role or roles in the community and are honoring the ecosystem or the dynamic nature of an ecosystem, and that is applied into the infrastructure or the framework of a community. So that begins with setting up the community values and the charter to align with shared principles and visions that hold the human need, that hold the community need, that hold the planetary need at its core, and actually to create the guardrails to support that. And as that's created, inevitably being able to program some of these systems and architectures into the smart contract so that the system is actually orientated towards growth, towards cross-pollination, towards reciprocal exchange, without disproportionate hierarchies actually dispersing their energy. So in a nutshell, literally looking at the past, looking at what works, what is time honored, because it's still here and available to us, and applying these systems to these new community designs, and recognizing, which is very important, that the technology and the smart contracts, the infrastructure, is actually a scaffolding for human connection. So without solving the human connection piece, facilitating conversation, dialogues that are actually reciprocated and transparent, the technology, even if it's great, it's not going to work, right? So that would be my answer.
I love that. I always say how, technology is merely the bridge. And I heard this in a masterclass I took recently, that humanization and being human is the actual moat, right? Around any business model, especially in the world that we're living in now, where there's so much information being flooded in and there's just a lot of noise. Savannah, same question, if you want to expand on it.
I love that answer, by the way. As you can see, I was violently sort of nodding because I think this technology has to be designed with empathy and with deep communal values. And unlike the traditional systems that we are all familiar with, whether that's the corporate America or a corporate world, because that's a world platform, it's not just America, but whether it's in the corporate context or whether that's in the governmental context, there have always been these sort of parameters and intermediaries that dictate how we interact with one another. And what this technology really does is distribute that ownership and that collective responsibility to everyone. And it takes it out of this framework of being constructed for the benefit of, these central systems. They're really now in the hands of you and me to decide how we're going to collaborate, how we're going to interact with one another. And it sets itself up for these amazing community standards by which we can all live and interact more freely and engage with a great sense of I don't know, better term than collective responsibility to one another, to the environment, to our communities. And that is, like you said, a time-honored standard. So we don't have to go too far to see that that's how many communities have been able to operate when traditional systems did not work for them. They operated in these type of communal values. And that's what I think this technology can help enable us to do again.
Miranda, did you want to expand on that based on your experience?
Oh, totally. So I was gonna say, yeah, I agree. In terms of blockchain, what really attracted me when I remember, when I first got into this, was how exciting it is that it's totally decentralized. That basically, versus the traditional centralized, one company, this is where it's totally decentralized. Everyone could participate. And I think my current project now that I'm working on is called Go Mutual. And we're basically disrupting, a traditional industry insurance using mutuality. So mutuality is something that's been around for a long, long time, hundreds of years, and it really hasn't changed. But now technology such as blockchain, we're able to have a real use case and, basically a real use case where we use technology to make it more efficient, make it totally decentralized where everybody could participate, and everything's more efficient using smart contracts, it's transparency. And, so what's exciting is a lot of these things that's been around for a long, long time, like mutuality, it's it was hard to do. And now technology blockchain, we're able to actually, make it more efficient where everybody could participate for the benefit of everybody versus traditionally a centralized organization. So I see things are continuing to change. And in terms of I was telling Tanya, in terms of my husband actually once said to me, he said the pillars of the economy is called FIRE, financial, insurance, and real estate. Those are the pillars of the economy. And it's exciting where basically now you can have actually technology, empower, using technology, you can actually make things a lot more efficient, things that haven't changed for, hundreds and hundreds of years. You're able to make it more efficient, more transparent, where everyone could be involved. And that's what I'm seeing now.
In a lot of cases, it's an invitation to disrupt what has been for a long time predatory paradigm set up for a certain way where the humans aren't really the North Star or the star of the show. It's really been more based on profits. Steph, did you want to chime in?
Sure. Without repeating so much of the information that's already been shared, I would say accountability. So I think one of the things that ancestral wisdom does, it helps us be accountable. For me, when I think about synonymous words that may be associated with ancestral wisdom, it's a synonymous terms, phrases. It's a slowing down. It's a presence to life, to self, to community, to nature. There's a natural connection and relationship, a more fluid and healthy, aware, deliberate relationship with the natural systems of Earth and Earth speed and the way that our human physiology interacts with that. I think so much of big business, big tech, and this is nothing against big business, big tech. And one of the reasons is we're here is because of that. I'm an advocate for it. I'm not necessarily for an advocate of a runaway system. And I think over time, unless there are checks and balances in place, unless there are deliberate practices in place that help us reflect on our actions and our thoughts and our decisions, that runaway systems are created. And ancestral wisdom, if we slow down long enough, we can hear the truth. We can hear the truth between the beats, and that's important. And I think as a collective, we've lost our way a little bit there. It's all about progress. It's all about development. It's all about fast pace. It's all about quarterly shareholder reports. It's all about quarterly profits and an increase in profits quarter upon quarter upon quarter. And if we're not doing that, we're failing. And so we have these stakeholders that are shareholders and nothing else matters. The reality is we're multifaceted, multi-layered beings. There are many stakeholders at place when we're making decisions as individuals and as organizations. So I think ancestral wisdom gives us an opportunity to slow down a little bit and look at where we really want to go. And I get that people and different organizations and groups are going to have a different perspective and opinion on what that looks like. But if we don't slow down long enough, we won't be able to have those meaningful discussions. And then we look back and it's a little too late. And my preference is that we don't get there.
Savannah, this next question will start with you. And this is just, I think the biggest barrier to mainstream adoption of any emerging tech, especially Web3, is education, right? Because the general population is only seeing, they're working their everyday lives, they're super busy, and they're only going to attach to what they're hearing potentially on the news or what they're reading. So what role can education and awareness play in ensuring that community members or future consumers are empowered to participate in a more meaningful way? And how do we expand that further, especially when we're talking about underserved communities that sometimes get siloed out from learning or getting to know some of these sort of education opportunities?
Well, the first thing that I think of is how difficult we make new systems, because we create like these barriers based on language alone, right? All of Web3 is a whole new language. I'm like, why? Like, why do we have to talk about things that don't connect with people because we want to be special, right? So education is about contextualizing and connecting. So what it means is that you have to take this really abstract idea, which is Web3 blockchain, which we talk about here as though everyone that's listening knows exactly what we're talking about, which they probably don't. Not everyone. And we have to make it such that people understand that your everyday life is somehow guarded by a lot of technology in your world. So everything you do has an element of tech attached to it. The way we have made it accessible is that it's user-friendly. Web3 is just the next iteration, right, of this type of tech innovation that isn't quite mass adopted yet, because people don't really understand what we are all talking about when we say Web3 and blockchain. So what we have to do is start to say, okay, what does blockchain really mean to the average person? And what it really means is that they finally have control and ownership of the things that they have been creating and of the data that they hold dear, right? So a lot of data that we see roaming around the internet scares people, right? But if you get to decide and you get to hold your own data backpack, right? That's what I call it, is a data backpack. I have a lot of data that I would like to be able to access freely, but I've got to go through some system to get there. The whole idea of blockchain is we take that away from these central systems that decide when that information is used and when it's not. So for example, if you think about social media really got big because creators were getting on their platforms and creating a lot of wealth for big corporations, right? But that content was yours. But yet you have to chase the algorithm in order for your content to get out to the people that you want it to be out to, because the algorithm decides on today, unless you're creating an Instagram reel, we're not sending it out to anyone. Why is that your place to do? That's my data, that's my information, and I'm the one empowering you. I want that ownership back. I want that control back. And I think for me, for people that sit at the margins, what's happened to them is they don't get to participate in any of these types of systems that exist already. So now this is an opportunity for them to control all of what they have, what they own, and finally get paid for what it is that they create. And so in my mind, that education is the way that we get people to participate. It's also the way that we get people to understand their own power. Because I think they felt powerless in a society where everything was driven by, capital metrics. That is not really the human, existence. We don't really care about ratios and capital and all of that. Yes, it's important to make money in our process, but we have to have an element that says, me as an individual matters in this whole ecosystem. And Web3 was our next chance to redesign what has historically not allowed for inclusion and mass participation. So education is at the fundamental, ground level of how we're going to change this whole game. And that's what we do at Women X Meta, is give that information to people so that they feel empowered to do what they have always been able to do, but they've always had some kind of gatekeeper around that process. So hopefully I answered your question.
You did. And actually, before I go to Nikhil, someone commented, loving the conversation as an Indigenous environmental science grad on traditional environmental knowledge and data biases. Nikhil, I don't know if you wanted to expand on this, because this actually takes it to another question that I would want to ask Nikhil and Stefan, is basically just the idea of creating sort of circular economies within these communities. I've always felt like that's a component that is missing in a lot of communities. It's either very education driven, very service driven. But I love that you guys at Azraya are bringing really in a full spectrum of pillars to bridge. But first, Nikhil, do you want to expand on the education side? And then it would be, how can people start dreaming into creating better or ideas of circular economies with emerging tech?
Yeah, thank you. I'll expand on the education piece first. 100% echo what's been shared already. And actually, right now, within our community, one of our community members is delivering a masterclass on how to navigate the wild west of DeFi, right? Because it is a wild west, the whole industry, and it really is one of the pillars of Azraya is education and supporting heart-centered entrepreneurs and staying abreast of the trends and ahead of the curve, so that they can have a strategic advantage to essentially generate more impact. So it's pivotal, and Web3, it is a paradigm shift. It's a paradigm shift. For the longest time, many of us have been operating in silos or in an individualized context and maybe some aspects of community. And to think in a decentralized perspective requires thinking differently around what it means to exchange and to share information in nuanced ways. And then there's the whole self-custody piece. What does it mean to actually own my data and be responsible for that, to have sovereignty? It is a shift. What would have made the shift easier, in my opinion, and actually a reflection from one of our lead blockchain engineer, who's actually also working for the biggest auditing firm in the industry. He believes that the Web3 industry in some capacity has failed because they haven't created an effective dialed-in user experience to onboard people into the space. It's still clunky. I don't think it's always going to be like that. There's going to be more effective ways like magic logins, one-click experiences. But for now, signing up for a MetaMask, going into an exchange, buying tokens, putting them onto your nano ledger, all of that is foreign, right? So there is still a process that needs to happen, but we're going to get there. So yes, education is key. With respect to circular economies, what is so important about a circular economy is recognizing that we do not have to be dependent on centralized powers to facilitate the interaction and the dynamic sharing of resources, products, services. The day of the middleman is over, and the middleman, of course, takes cuts and actually, in sometimes nefarious ways, takes data, is governing the process in a ways that doesn't respect and honor the individual. So why we're so inspired to create a circular economy, because we believe together as a community within a Sraya, also interoperably connecting to other networks, to other communities, we can create our own economic systems that don't depend on the power of these institutional organizations, but the power of the people, and trusting that we can govern the economy with a heart-centered approach, leaning on ancestral principles, on community, on heart, and fundamentally building something that can actually thrive. The beautiful thing with Web3 technology is that the infrastructure can support instantaneous transactions, transparency on-chain, on the ledger, in which we don't need to use these heavy old legacy systems to facilitate all that. And there's just quick dynamic transactions with a network fee that can then be redistributed back to the treasury, that can then get redistributed back to the people, who can then decide where the intention and energy is going to go. This is reflecting how nature works, connected in a mycelial system. So you have a forest, all trees are connected together to the mycelial network, where if there's one tree that's sick in that side of the forest, there's resources that are going to be distributed to that tree. So if there's a fledgling startup that exists within the ecosystem, guess what? That startup can actually draw from the network, the resources, the advisory, the actual tokens that are there, and actually build something together. And leveraging things like smart contracts and new equity models, we can thrive together in the way that nature works. So I'll close by saying that I personally believe and see that blockchain technology, decentralized technology, really is a mirror of nature. Truly it is. And technology actually is nature. So you're watching this event on your phone or on your laptop. If you look at it, what is your laptop made of, or your phone? It's made out of elements, crystals, elements from the earth. So we're literally just dancing in this way, and we're also just adapting our perspective to return to nature, I feel. That'd be my response.
Beautiful. Miranda, do you want to expand?
Yeah, I do. I think sometimes people get lost in terms of all these terminology. Like for me, it's blockchain is actually really, really simple. Like when I first heard it, I was like, what is this? But blockchain is really simple. It's just an Excel. It's literally just an Excel. And I think a lot of people, there's all this terminology, and they tend to get really scared about it because they're like smart contract, what's blockchain, what's decentralization, what's a DAO. There's a lot of this lingo out there. I think if people kind of just break it down, like blockchain is basically an Excel, and a smart contract basically means it's on the code. So for me, I think what I'm really excited about is the fact that we actually have now some real life applications that people can actually play with. So when you start saying stuff sometimes it seems so I remember telling my mom about it. My mom's like, what the heck, but what I'm excited about is now there's actually real application. Like for example, this project, one of the things that got me really excited about this project I'm working on was because it had a real application. Before, I worked with a number of different type of blockchain project, and they were it was very exciting, big concept and all that. But I think like now, like, like what we're missing is some real application where people actually play with it, actually try it. So this project I'm working on now is actually, it's pretty simple. It's like auto collision and comprehensive protection. It sounds pretty boring, but actually everyone who has a car, they get it. It's like, hey, we have to get it. People get collision, people have accidents. So one of the things I'm really excited is like now, like finally, we actually see some real application that people can actually play with. And then when they play with it, they realize, oh, this is what a wallet is. Oh, this is what Nikhil meant, basically, getting a on ramp or off ramp. Oh, this is what it means, like blockchain. I think unless people actually like start playing with it, then they realize, oh, it's not that hard. It's kind of like maybe like, a lot of stuff before people say, oh, why don't you Zelle me or whatever? Like, unless they actually play with it and actually have like one-to-one use of it, it just seems so foreign. So, I think now, because like, in the sense that we actually do see a lot of this, application. I think it's great, Savannah, you're doing education, because education is so important. Because I think people hear about it, they get intimidated, especially I think as a woman. I mean, actually everybody, it's everybody. Because I could think like a lot of people I know who are techies, or people who have tons of experience, who when they hear about like, they get scared. But when they actually, I think when they actually get a chance to play with it, talk to someone they trust, and then just sit down with them and say, hey, just do it. Let me show you how to do it. It takes 2 minutes, and they see it, right? And you show them how to get a wallet. You show them how to, how to sign on. You show them how it works, or give them a real use application. They're like, wow, this is not that hard. I get it. It's really easy. And you're telling me this thing is totally, this is it. This is blockchain. This is the wallet. Then they're like, they get it. And then they totally, and then like the light bulb goes up. And that's why I think education is so important, because unless they have someone showing them like the real hands-on how it works, real applications, it's really hard for a lot of people to conceptualize all these like big terminology. And I think that's why education is so important, because once they actually, play on it, then they get, that big wall, is gone. Otherwise, when they hear about it, they get so intimidated. They don't know what's going on. They start thinking about all the, when you don't know something, you get scared. But once you see it and you play with it, then you're like, wow, you're in power. And I totally agree. Like, education is so important. And I guess the whole recirculation capital, I think when you educate people, you're actually doing that. You're empowering them. Like educating them, you're giving them like, empowering them that they know what's going on, and now they can be part of this whole new economy. So for me, I think that whole recirculation of capital and education is actually kind of synonymous. It's like, because when you're educating someone, you're basically, you're giving them power in their hand that they can actually, use and play with and, monetize.
Did you have any comments on it?
Yeah, I mean, everything that's been said is, in very deep alignment with, and just a shout out to Nikhil. This is why he's our CEO. I mean, fucking brilliant. Thank you. And I'm biased. I know I'm biased. I get it. I think in staying true to the question, why education is very important with respect to Web3 is Web3 is new. The interface is new. The technology is new. It's foreign. People already struggle with technology, full stop. There is this almost disconnect with technology for so many of us. And so what I think purposeful, deliberate education does in this space is it creates accessibility and familiarity. And that ensures that people, consumers, etc., actually participate because they're not scared or overwhelmed to engage. Now, when we look at sociocultural constructs, we can look at select groups of people generally having more access to technology, which means genuinely being able to place their input of opinion and perspective into the space that lends itself to the future application and development of that technology and how that impacts the world globally. There's less and less people actually doing that. And so when it comes to education, and again, if we're very deliberate around that, diversity of opinion and perspective really matters. Demographic diversity really matters. So we can advance these technologies in a more robust way, but in a more relatable way as well, because we're multi-layered beings. This is really, really important. We're not what's the word I'm looking for? It's eluding me right now, but we're not just one type of expression in the world. We're so different. So we need diversity of perspective in emerging technology so that we can shape the future in a way that we all desire and be more inclusive in ways that maybe we haven't been. But again, that inclusivity, I think, lends itself to more robust use of a technology, and it empowers more people. And I think it advances us faster. Just think about this. Can you imagine for a moment if, and Africa is a very big continent. I use that as an example. It's a very big continent, and there's so many different cultures in Africa. But can we imagine if we, as a collective society, and this is similar to what Nikhil was speaking to earlier, if instead of being very extractive as a Western culture, we were more additive, and we were more curious in really listening to what certain cultures, and we started somewhere of that continent really needed, but we empowered people with technology, with the advancement of technology, if that's what they wanted, right? If that's what they wanted. But imagine their voice, like, a billion people coming online that haven't come online before because they have access to the internet now and they have technology. Like, how would that impact the way we think global? How would that impact global think? I just don't know, but I'm really, really curious. And I'm sure that a percentage of people would want to have a voice and would want to be part of that global community, this interconnected global community that we're a part of now. And again, I'm not attempting to be naive or utopian in my thinking. I'm really just saying, I know it's a big mission to do something like that. I'm just saying is what would happen if we had legitimate, diverse perspective in the space? How would that shift the way we think about certain things? How would that problem solve? I know, to me, it's a very exciting proposition.
And it's an important question to ask. Before I start asking some additional questions, we have questions coming in from the audience. I'll do my best to get the context. Tippy Taylor says, as someone in Web3 since February of 2021, I'm interested in thoughts on legacy of various blockchain with data storage. There is concerns for me about storage and IRL impacts that still exist even in Web3. I don't know if any of you guys want to take that.
Can you say it one more time? Sorry.
I think she's still worried about just blockchain, the data storage, like how safe is it? Really is what I'm thinking. She's saying there's concerns for something about storage and impact to the data being stored there.
I think that's actually, if I could answer, I think that's actually, that's a very good question. And I think a lot of people are worried about that. Like blockchain, what's good about blockchain, it's an Excel and you can't really change it. But at the same time, things are moving really fast. And, like I would say like wallets, like, losing the keys to a wallet. You can see this example, for example, Prime Trust. I don't know if you guys read about it. They lost the wallet, right? I believe it's like $45 million. And it's like $25 million and they can't find the keys to it. And it's kind of like, it's kind of sad, but at the same time, it is kind of funny. I mean, in the sense that, as long as that's not your wallet, right? I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, how could you lose a wallet to, $45 million? But that's exactly what happened. So it's like, once you lose the keys, no one could access it. And a lot of people are like online. They're like, oh my God, they check the address and they see the money in there and they're like, it's definitely not moving. So they see the wallet, they see everything. But so I would say like, there is like, it's a very valid question in terms of, what's going on in terms of, storage, security. You see a lot of hacking. And I think, with education, again, education comes in, and with education, we can hopefully alleviate some of those concerns, because you see, how you could do it properly and how you could, take precaution to make sure, things like that don't happen.
And John, I don't know, did anyone else want to expand on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind adding to
Okay,
that.
cool.
So in the context of like your data stored on chain, right? So in a true decentralized system, say you're storing a document which is meaningful to you. Technically speaking, the document should be stored on every single node point in the network, meaning that if you lost access to that, then someone else, the whole network is going to be able to store that data. That's in the truest, most idealistic sense. That is some of the power that a decentralized network has. The context would be, or the flip side would be, right now you're storing your document, say, on Google Docs. If for some reason, unless you have it offline, if Google just says, you know what, we're quitting, which they won't, your data could just vanish into the ethers, right? So there's a real benefit to that. And there are some decentralized projects like storage, and there's multiple others that can facilitate data storage in a truly decentralized system. Now, what we're playing with our design is, well, we're playing with the concept of peer-to-peer data storage, because not every single piece of data, your personal data, needs to be on-chain. Because if that was the case, well, the environmental impact and the data processing power for the whole network to store everything is huge, right? So right now we're dancing with what is the mission critical data that needs to be stored on chain, and what is the data that can then be shared peer to peer. Say me and Savannah are collaborating on a document through torrent technology, which is old school, like Napster. We could share specific data, and then if we've decided on something that is important, we can then put it on chain into the ledger, right? So there's nuances to it, and I think a lot of the infrastructure is still being created for that. So that'd be my response.
Beautiful. Anyone else?
I think we're all threading, little nuances here for people, but what I want to emphasize is when we talk about the failures that have happened, most of those are not on-chain failures. Those are the systems that get you to the chain, right? So it's all the centralized systems that are failing. So if you have to have a wallet, that's a central system, right, that gets you onto the chain. So whatever that interface is where that problem almost always lies. So a lot of things that you hear about, it makes it sound like the whole blockchain has got these scammy issues. It's not the blockchain, because that is decentralized. That is across a massive network of nodes, as Nikhil says. It's like it's not at all the problem or the single point of failure. It's these systems that take you into that process, and where almost all the problems tend to exist. So I think we have to stay true to where the actual decentralized technology exists in blockchain, which is solid, which is transparent, which is trustworthy. The systems that take us there sometimes can fail us. And right now we don't have any other solution to going direct to the chain. We don't have any other way to get there but to set up a wallet with Coinbase or set up a wallet with MetaMask. So I do think that, we sometimes have to separate these issues a little bit in terms of where those problems exist. They exist in the central systems between here and getting to the blockchain.
I think there's also another thing. It's like, I think Nikhil mentioned this thing. It's like, like what kind of data do you put on the blockchain? Because, if you put everything on the blockchain, it does get very, very heavy. Think of it as Excel. You put all that document there, it's going to get really heavy, and the whole processing is going to be really hard to, it's going to take forever. So I think that's something that a lot of people are grappling with in terms of like, what kind of data do you actually put on there? Like data, when people think data, what exactly, are you talking about personal data? Are you talking about pictures? Are you talking about, like what kind of data? And also like, there's a lot of like IPFS, in terms of like, pinning technology. But I think, data it's so important now, especially now, like privacy, where basically data ownership. And what's exciting now is like with blockchain technology, they can actually allow people to share data without actually sharing their identity. So you kind of see like some of these like amazing technology coming out where basically now people could protect their data and share all this like, personal information, from one entity to another without actually exposing the person's identity. So there's a lot of security. And so there's actually like situation where people like, I made that joke, right? Someone lost the keys to it. But at the same time, there's also a lot of technology that's actually really, really, really good that protects individuals, make it more efficient. And it's taking us to this next level,
So someone asked in our audience, John Runyon, which I thought was a beautiful question. He says, do you believe that our current intelligence and advancements, which are mostly intellect and data manipulation, as opposed to ancient cultures who advance their intelligence in different ways, such as sound, frequency, and balance in nature, our tech seems very much a small slice of overall intelligence? Will we get back to a more broad, I guess, more connected approach? I feel the small slice to its end game is destruction. I guess in who's building, I'm sort of like assuming here that he's speaking just to the fact of perhaps who's building it, and perhaps it not being as connected to nature is what I get from that. I don't know if anybody else wanted to comment on that.
I think that's a really good observation, actually, Tanya. I was actually thinking about this actually the other day with my kid, and my son's actually 12. I don't know. I think we had this deep conversation about like, you know, where the world's actually going. And I was saying like, you know, it's true. I think as we get AI technology, you know, a lot of things that we take for granted now, it's going to be, I would say, in the next 5 years, 10 years, you know, I think that question is so relevant in the sense that it's true. The next 5, 10 years, things going to be so much, it's all going to be so data oriented. It's like now, you know, you can still go into a place, apply for something online. They meet you, they shake your hand, they see the actual person. The next 5, 10 years, everything's going to be so data oriented that you're not going to have that personal one-to-one. I really do feel that. And I think it's like times are changing where, you know, it's going to be a little more, it's like when you apply for jobs, it's all going to be based on your data. And it's like, you know, like when you apply for college, you apply for jobs, everything, it's going to be determined by your data versus like now, you know, now like you kind of see it now. People apply for jobs, everything online on LinkedIn, Indeed, but versus maybe 20 years ago, you still have that, you know, personal interaction when people like meet you and they're like, they look beyond, you know, they're like, hey, this person, what's this person like? Maybe, you know, the data doesn't tell you everything about them. Maybe they don't have but hey, they make it up in something else. But later on, I think next 5 years, it's all going to be based on data, and they'll have these certain requirements. If you don't meet that requirement, then they're not even going to get a chance to get that access. And that's something I see. I totally see. Yeah, and it's pretty scary, actually.
I don't know what that background noise is. I feel like I'll just chime in with my own 2 cents. I feel like we're in an interesting intersection where it could go one of 2 ways, right? What happens with how the psychology of humans and what we're actually wired for is more of that human sort of connection. So the more this tech kind of comes in and we're getting hit with content at the speed of light now with ChatGPT and all of that, people are going to feel nostalgic for things that are more authentic or original. But again, we are in that intersection, right? Of emerging tech moving at the speed of light and humans at the same time. What I find interesting, because I spend a lot of my time on LinkedIn, is human is now a new marketing buzzword, which I find very interesting. There were like some big conferences in tech within the last month, and I'm pretty sure HubSpot had this theme as well. And it was about humanization, as if it's a new go-to-market strategy. I think data did like spoil people for many years to feel like they could control that destiny. And they're seeing now that this community building, network effects, ecosystems, interdependent ecosystems is now more of the way of the future, because humans are being overwhelmed with just way too much information. It's easy to just turn off. And over time, it's easy to see that there isn't authenticity in what's being written, because we're all energetic beings, to what Steph was talking about, we're multidimensional beings, and there's an energetic aspect that is attached to it. Sorry, I was looking at another question. I do think we're at that intersection. Brianna's asking, I'm curious to know if the speakers have suggestions on how to make Web3 blockchain technology seem less daunting and more user-friendly, encouraging more people to experiment with it or play around with it. I know we touched upon it a little bit. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on that one.
I think, yeah, use cases. For people to actually get their hands on and start playing with it, I think that's the best way to learn. You know, basically just having, basically getting people like access, and so they can actually use it in the day, in their day to day.
I'll echo that. And one of the most simplest ways you could do that is you could buy some Bitcoin, Ethereum, or even a stable coin, which essentially is just tethered to the US dollar, and put the funds into a DeFi protocol. Essentially what that means is this: you are purchasing the token, you're lending it to a protocol like Uniswap, and essentially you are becoming your own bank. And when you lend it to a protocol, essentially you are facilitating the transaction fees and the exchange from one person to the other, and you are taking a slice of it. And so essentially, instead of having your funds just sitting in a bank, maybe not earning that much interest at all, you could earn in anywhere from 1% to more percent, depending on how your risk tolerance is, and just start to kind of play. Right, that's just like an initial way to do it. And then of course, like there's some incredible communities out there that you can purchase either an NFT or a token to get access to the community and learn things, connect with other people. And there's incredible examples of that as well. So it is literally trying, experimenting, and recognizing that the beautiful thing is if you're getting access to a community, generally you can then sell your token as well, and maybe even make a profit on that. So it's all about getting your hands in the clay.
And I guess I would add one other idea here, which is I always try to tell people this community aspect is really powerful in Web3. And it's an opportunity to leverage learning too, where you can scaffold into this, not trying to consume it all at once, but over time. So just like Nikhil said, you can experiment by using a wallet. But the way that we like to do it is try to meet people where they are. And we try to do that in a way where we say, come join our community, because in that community, we'll make it like a book club. And at a book club, let's be honest, we all agree on the book we're going to read. But when we come to book club, we sit around and talk about everything else in life but the book. And it's because we are human beings who are connected to this world, and we want the support of a wider community of people who can help us get through life's challenges. So the way that I see it is, if you want this to be less daunting for you, find a community. We create community at Women X Meta. Come join us, right? Come learn with us, because what I might know, I can share with you. What you know, you can share with me. And everybody in the community does that. We leverage our learning, multiple times, right? And so that is the way to make this less daunting, is do it with people, other people who are curious and who want to become competent in the same thing that you're interested in. And I think you will find that to be the most powerful way to become connected to this Web3 world, because I can tell you, it is truly engaging, and it is truly almost like something that you can't stay away from. Once you get a little taste of it, you're like, that is really kind of cool. Look at what the things can happen here, and look how much of power has been restored to me in the process. So I think you'll learn it a lot better if you find a community that really connects with you.
Yeah, I agree. Go to a community, have them show you how to set up a wallet. Grab somebody. Totally agree.
Someone did ask, it's related to an environmental question, which Nikhil, you kind of covered on what to put on the blockchain versus what not to, but she asked regarding environmental impacts. Regarding environmental impacts, all data and digital has an environmental impact. So Web3 is still evolving as it needs for policy and international regulations around it. There's still a lot of unknown territory around how to really navigate the sustainability aspects of the storage or the power needed to contain that. I don't know. I think we kind of covered that, actually. And I know we have about 10 minutes left. I wanted to just talk more into, before we close it out, and closing it out in about 10 minutes, around 6:30, everyone's going to be able to go into, whoever desires to or feels called to share some of their learnings or connect and collaborate in the lounge area of the lobby. But something that the Azraya community talks a lot about is, the redefining of value systems and principles and where we are today, and sort of what are some of the maybe shifts that would have to take to get us to that other future state. Nikhil, I don't know if you want to expand on, maybe drop some seeds to people on just some thoughts on the value systems that potentially could be embodied by founders or community members that basically are more around purpose, impact, value, and giving.
Yeah, I think the last word you just shared, which is giving, is really the key, right? It's like moving from like what can I get to what can I give, because the more that you essentially, like a Web3 ecosystem is only as valuable as the people in it and the energy that's being circulated, right? So fundamentally, that would be like a key value shift, recognizing that the technology or the design is going to support you when you're putting energy into it. It is tracking that, it is rewarding that, and it's going to come back to you just by the design of it. So it's actually a fundamental shift with respect to how you are looking at the world, how you're looking at value exchange, from like a one-time transactional type of environment to like, I'm part of this. Not just am I part of it, I'm actually a stakeholder. I'm actually an owner of this community. And the more that I give, i.e. like you are nurturing seeds in a garden with your energy, with your intention, inevitably the fruits that get born from those trees, you're going to be able to harvest them and actually, feed from that. So I like to use that type of metaphor as a true Web3 community is like a garden, an ecosystem, a Garden of Eden, perhaps, that we're cultivating and planting seeds, which are different offerings, different products, different experiences. And the nature of coming together with like an open system, it's going to allow the energy to flow back to you in really beautiful ways.
Love that. Yeah, I love it. Savannah, what do you think are some guiding principles that people should be considering as they're visioning into a different type of future?
Look, I believe it's all interconnected, right? We can't sort of disaggregate all of these various elements. When I think about sustainability, I think about the three pillars that most folks talk about, which is, environment, social, governance, right? Those are three pillars that sort of reflect what sustainability is meant to be. Well, there is no environmental without a social co-benefit. So we can talk all day long about climate change and our carbon footprint and what we're going to do about that. But if we don't figure out how we're going to deal with the fact that 1 billion people are going to be displaced by either climate change or some kind of disruption, in a matter of years, that is something that has to be dealt with, right? So we have to think about the human element of all of this. And that is central, which, when I put those three letters together, I'm like, why do people keep skipping over the S as though it's not there, right? They talk about E, they talk about G, and S just kind of an elusive idea, right? Because people are like, oh, it's hard to measure, it's hard to, define, it's hard. You know what? Life is a little hard. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a responsibility to take on what's difficult with ambition and decide that we're going to change the trajectory for people, because that will self-solve the environmental problem. If we think about it, COVID forced us to face a problem that we had, and by just standing still for weeks, it healed the planet. We can do this. It's not impossible to do, but we revert back to some old ways because we're not ready to accept the fact that we all have an individual responsibility. It's not about corporation X. It's not about government Y. It's about you and me. We all have a responsibility in this next generation to move and shift our focus towards people, planet, and then maybe we will have profits once we get those things right. And I think that that's the future. And I think our young people are going to force us to deal with this, whether we like it or not. They are not accepting the fact that we have been consumerists and we haven't really cared about anything else. They want something new from us. They're going to force us into that direction. And that's why human, whatever you said, is now popularized. It's not because those people really understand it, because it's always been there. It's because it's now the new virtue signaling to say to young people, hey, we care about you. No, you don't. You got to sit down and really work through the problem. So that's what I see for the future, is that we are going to be forced to make these decisions, and we need to listen to the voice of young people to get it right.
Miranda or Steph, I don't know if you want to expand.
It's pretty deep. I was agreeing with, like, both what Nikhil and Savannah were saying. I was thinking about, I was like, it's true. I think what's happening now is, like, it's actually a very unique time. It really is. It's like that influx, like you were saying, Tanya. And it's like things are moving really fast now. ChatGPT, AI, blockchain. And I really believe that, like, like all of us, right? It's like, it's just go do it. Like, go grab that friend, go to that community and say, hey, show me what a wallet is. What is this stuff? I mean, you really have to, because what's happening now is, like, it's kind of like, you could think of this like, it's like before the industrial age, before, like, and then there's an industrial age, right? Things totally change. The automation. I think we're at that point now for that next, like, inflection where basically, AI is taking over. If you look at ChatGPT, it's really amazing. Like, you could ask ChatGPT to, like, like, you're traveling, make an itinerary for you. It's amazing what's going on now. Like, I'm blown away by, like, technology. I'm just so blown in the real use applications. It's amazing, and it's scary. And I kind of worry about our kids too, because everything's online now. It's like, you got to embrace it. If you don't embrace it, then you can't be part of this beautiful new world, actually. So it's like, there's no time but now. So go grab that girlfriend or a friend of yours and go to that community and dive in. I totally believe that.
I think to close it out, because we'll close it out, someone commented saying, thank you all. This has been a good reminder and an awakening for me. But to close it out, I usually like to just ask our panelists, not a blank canvas, because everything is already being birthed into the world and it's in process. But if you could fast forward a few years from now, mm-hmm. Where do you see, and I'll start with you, Nikhil, we'll just go around. Where do you see Azraya, like 3 or 4, 5 years from now? If you could just literally, and you guys do, dream boldly, what does that look like?
Yeah, I see Azraya really being a sanctuary. So in Sanskrit, Azraya means sanctuary, base, shelter. A sanctuary for heart-centered entrepreneurs, visionaries, stewards to come together, to collaborate, to play. And I see Azraya really coming to a level of maturity where the community design and the technology is able to facilitate seamless, dynamic interactions, not just within our community, but also within larger communities as well. So we see Azraya as being the space between spaces. And fundamentally, the vision that I'm seeing is that the Azraya protocol layer will almost serve as a protocol of integrity, for the world, that can actually stand for truth, can kind of stand for, like, integrity, for really meaningful interactions that actually consider the heart, consider the planet, and consider humans first. I see rapid innovation, a phenomenal activated community of beings that are connected to an individual vision and are moving towards that, but also feel so confident and held on their pathway towards their own self-mastery, where everyone in the community has been activated as a leader within their own right, and that the technology is facilitating really meaningful interactions that are a win-win-win outcome for all. That's what I see.
Love that. Savannah?
So we're leaning into young people. We are an intergenerational organization. Me and my children represent X to Z, right? And I feel like my responsibility to this organization is to be the advocate, be the support, be the conduit that allows for the young people to decide how this world is going to look in the next 10 years and beyond. And so we are focused on the Gen Z to the Gen Alphas, right? We are trying to build with them in mind and not try to think we will solve those problems, but to offer them the voice to be able to solve the problems themselves. They know, and it's remarkable. My oldest daughter is an educator. It's remarkable what those first graders understand, what they know, how community oriented they already are, right? Their friends mean more to them than anything. And so at the end of the day, they know how to solve problems because they use just simple, what is fair, what is right, what is good, what is equal, what is just. They understand that just by nature. They know it. We get conditioned to believe other things later in life, but when you talk to young people, they just want to do what makes sense and what is right and what is fair. And so that's where we want to lean in and make sure that we are helping to support that next generation of learning and basically giving them all the power.
Thank you. Miranda, as you're going on this journey with Go Mutual, that is a real life utility. It's weaved into everyday life. And I know you guys have it's a little more seamless with they don't have to open a wallet in order to use it. What do you foresee that journey will look like in the next couple of years?
I think it's pretty exciting. Our whole thing is it's member-owned, member-controlled. So I think, it's this whole decentralization where like now the members could be part of our protocol, and we deal with something very, simple. It's collision, auto collision, and comprehensive protection so everyone could be part of this versus now there's so much central organizations such as insurance been around for a long time. And what I see now for my organization is that basically members could all be part of this. They could participate, they could grow together, they could be part of the decision-making process. And it's pretty exciting in the sense that we're rolling out in the US this year. So we're rolling it out in the US, and I see us actually expanding globally. And it's a pretty exciting, in the sense that we have a real use case. So I'm really excited I can't wait to actually show you guys, the actual application. So if any of you guys are interested in something, you could play around and let me know. And, I look forward to meeting all of you guys, maybe one day in person.
Steph, any closing words?
Sure. With respect to Australia, Nikhil really summed it up, but let me take a human-centric approach for a moment. So when we look at optimizing the human self, we can look at agency and gratitude. And if those are two states that we can access on a regular basis and we have a close connection to that part of human expression, we tend to live very fulfilled lives. Let's reverse engineer that for a moment. In order to tap into genuine agency and genuine gratitude, we have to do, quote unquote, our inner work. In other words, healed people make healthy decisions. And so one of my greatest intentions in Australia, and this is because of my background, of course, is to paint everything that we do, a bit of a Trojan horse, right? Everything that we do with this sense of there is an opportunity to create greater wholeness. There's an opportunity to create greater healing within you as an individual, within you as you're in the community. That contribution then feeds into the community. The community absorbs that. And there's this trickle down effect or this domino effect of healthy interactions taking place. And when I expound that to leadership, and we look at some of the leaders today that we have in our world, whether it's governmental or corporations, without psychoanalyzing too deeply and going too deep down this rabbit hole, but it's very clear to see decisions that are being made that impact thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of people. Some of those decisions are being made from very internally fractured places within. So again, healed people, whole people make healthy decisions. So in the next few years, I see Australia being that sanctuary for people to come and discover themselves in new and profound ways.
Love that. And that's a beautiful way to close it out. I really wanted to thank you all for spending an hour and a half with us. I know you all have busy schedules, but the audience has really taken a lot of they've taken a lot of it to heart, and some of them have spoken into how it's been an awakening and an eye-opener for them. What's going to happen is in the next 24 to 48 hours, they're going to be getting a small, what I call a little virtual swag bag microsite that'll lead them into connecting with all of you. And also, I know Azariah has an upcoming Ancient Future Summit next week, so we'll lead them into that as well, so that they can continue to journey with you all. Same with Women X Meta, same with learning about what Go Mutual will be doing, and some of our supporting partners that are in alignment with our ethos will also be in there as well. For some of you who want to go into the lounge, you can continue the conversation there. But again, thank you so much for spending your time with all of us tonight, and until the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this podcast episode where we strive to create positive change and blueprint action items for that more inclusive world. We hope you're leaving us with heart full, with your heart energy ready to become a change agent in the world, that you're inspired to believe that the impossible is possible. We hope you enjoyed our discussion with our extraordinary panelists of futurists, disruptors, innovators, and dreamers. If you want to learn more about our mission at the Future of, as well as InFUUSE, you can stay up to date on future episodes and join our community. In the show notes, you can sign up for a newsletter. If you want to follow my journey, feel free to find me on Instagram under @Tanyette. That's TANYETTE. You can find me on LinkedIn @Tanyette Cologne. And also you can follow InFUUSE on LinkedIn as well, INFUUSE.com. Of course, I want to hear about your journey and stories as well. So feel free to send me an email at Tanyette@IN-FUUSE.com. I would love to highlight how some of the change agents and the things that you're learning with us are translating into your day-to-day life. Stay blessed. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you at our next virtual roundtable discussion. Ciao. Con mucho amor. Bye.